My name is Sohrab. I'm a managing partner at SE Consulting. And what I primarily do is workshops like these for product owners, scrum masters, leaders, and their whole teams. And today I will share one of the exercises that I do primarily in my product owner workshop, and it's called the snowflake exercise. And I'm very interested to see how these group of people will do on that exercise. The benchmark is everyone does really bad. so don't feel bad if you don't do that well. To give you a little bit of context, this will be a simulation, and the context is that paper snowflakes are a huge hit in the USA, right? You all remember FIFA World Cup 2010 in South Africa, where everyone was playing the vuvuzelas, right? And during that period of time, everyone was buying vuvuzelas in Europe. Now we're seeing this huge trend in the US. We want to do that in Germany as well. We want to sell as many snowflakes as possible. And I'm an investor, a venture capital investor. You are my teams. I'm willing to invest in every single of you teams with euro 10, which are on the table, and also give you a workshop so that you can capture the German market and make as much money as possible during the winter. Assume it's still winter. I know today spring is starting, but assume it's still winter, right? So what you get as a start is that investment. With that investment, you can buy stuff at this shop where Afar is the shop owner, right? We have a pair of scissors here for 3 euros. We have paper for 1 euro. We have pens. We have tape, all the things that you want. And that store is open 24/7. So during the exercise, you can go all the time and buy stuff that you need with that euro 10 or with the additional money you make by selling snowflakes to me, right? So ultimately, you have to create paper snowflakes and you sell them to me so I can sell them again to the market. So I'm an investor / wholesaler in that scenario, all right? What I also want you to do is to track your results. So we will be working in sprints or iterations, and every iteration is 6 minutes. It's 3 minutes of building stuff and planning how to build it, and 3 minutes in which you can sell stuff to me. So only in the second 3 minutes of a 6-minute iteration, I am willing to buy stuff. My shop is closed for the rest of the time. I will always announce market is open, market is closed, so you guys know at which stage we currently are. At the end of each iteration, one person in your team is supposed to track your results. And we will be tracking 4 things. 1, how many snowflakes did you build in that iteration? 2, how much money did you earn by selling those snowflakes? 3, how much money did you spend here in the shop? And you will always get a receipt, which will be the pink Post-its. And ultimately, how much you earned minus how much you spent would be the profit that you made. This is what I'm interested in as an investor. Correct? I don't have a clue. I'm a clueless investor. I just know that paper snowflakes are a huge hit in the US. That's what I know. And when we do the workshop, I will show you one type of snowflake that my friend Pete brought to me from the US, and he said that he bought it for $2. So most likely the wholesale price was $1. Right? So we have some kind of benchmark. I will briefly show you how to build a snowflake. And you can also go into the internet, use YouTube. There's tons of interesting videos out there. This is just one way of building them. So you will be able to purchase these sheets of paper. When you have them, you just fold them like this. And then you fold it back so you get something like a house. And then you imagine you can cut the bottom piece. We don't need that. So now you have a triangle, right? And you imagine there is a line right in the middle of the triangle. So you take that part of the triangle and you put it a bit further than the line is. And you turn it and you take the other part and move it back. So you get something like a cone. A cone for having ice cream, right? You take your pairs of scissors and now you cut it in a round shape. So it looks like a real cone. And now you can get very creative. I'll just show you the most simple version, which is a snowflake that looks a bit like, yeah. Let's see how this one turns out. Right, you get something like this. This is a very simple version. Let's say this is our benchmark, which has a wholesale price of €1 as an orientation, okay? Because I know that there will be negotiations from you guys. So I keep this one as a benchmark for €1, all right? I know it was quite a bit fast, so I will be still there and helping you guys out. Afar can also help out. But also, feel free to really use the internet. There's some amazing videos out there on how to create much better snowflakes than this one. All right? So, every team will get an A4 paper for their tracking sheet. You don't need to purchase that. But other than that, everything you want to use, you have to buy from that store. All right? And you will get a receipt, and if you sell something to me, you would also get like a check on how much. Well, if I buy 5 snowflakes, each €1, you get €5 from me. All right? So, we'll start the first iteration, which is twice 3 minutes. And remember, in the first 3 minutes, I'm not buying anything. In the second 3 minutes, you can come to me and sell your initial snowflakes to me. And the store of Afar is open 24/7. All right? So, first 3 minutes. One second. So the market is closed now. The first iteration is done. Remember to update your tracking sheet, right? Number of snowflakes created, how much you earned, how much you spent, and the profit. So, I'm opening up my store again. So, shop is closed again. The ones who are here can stay. Remember to update your tracking sheet once your team members come back. All right, everyone, just stop for a second. Just stop for a second. I've had snowflakes which I bought for €4. So if you're still producing €1 snowflakes, think about how you can get to €4 snowflakes. And also, it takes some time to think about how you've been working and maybe optimize that. All right? laden es wieder zu, Iteration ist zu Ende. Denkt daran, eure Tracking Sheets abzudaten. So, for those, we finish after this iteration. What I'd like you to do, before I give you your last, calculate how much you've made on average per snowflake in the iterations. So, you go iteration number 1, number of snowflakes created, let's say that's 3, and you've earned 4 euros. That's 4 divided by 3, €1.33 per snowflake in average. And you do that for every iteration, right? And then we'll debrief together. So, while you're calculating, that shouldn't take too long. I also like you to do a quick debrief within your table groups. Listen to me, please. Please, everyone, listen. And I want you to discuss in your table groups 3 questions. Number 1, what did you learn about the customer? Number 2, what did you do well as a team? And number 3, what could you have done better? Take 3 to 5 minutes to discuss that, and then we wrap it up all together. All right? I take the time, and then we discuss it together. What did you learn about the customer?
Changing a lot.
Changing a lot, really? So let's write down. What do you think the customer likes? Big, sophisticated, colorful, but not red, yeah? No warm colors, cold colors. What else? Stable. Precise, like high quality. So did that change?
At the beginning, yes.
No, did it change? Did I ever say I want unstable and then I change to I want stable? Did I ever say I want small and then change to I want big?
Well, you did pay the same amount.
Did I say that?
I mean, you paid for a small one the same amount as a big one.
But what did I say when I bought that small one?
You liked it.
No. I said my assumption is the customers like bigger ones, but I don't know. I'll buy it and then we'll see. And after one iteration, another team approached me with a small one and said, now I know I'm not going to buy small ones. So did I change in terms of requirement? They became clearer, right? So I learned over time. But again, what did we learn about the customer? Am I the customer? So who's the customer? Why don't you know?
We didn't ask.
No one asked, right? I mentioned early on, I have 2 roles. I'm an investor and I'm a wholesaler. By definition, a wholesaler is never the customer, right? I'm a distributor. If I don't like it, you don't make it to the market. But ultimate market success depends on whether the real customer likes it. And why don't you know who the customer is? Because none of you asked. And you mentioned earlier, like, how bad did the other teams do? No one ever asked. And I've run this workshop with innovation departments. No one asks. Why? Why didn't anyone ask? So the moment you get into doing, you forget about reflecting, right? And it's really important because whatever we do, ultimately, someone, ideally the customer, has to like it. So it's important that we know who the customer really is, right? So what we know now, or what I know as the wholesaler, the customers are families. Families with kids between the age of like 3 to, let's say, 8, right? Now comes the second question. What does the customer do with the paper snowflakes? What did I do when you handed me the snowflakes? Right? You handed me the snowflakes and I always did this. And I turned them, and for those who had colored snowflakes only on the one side, I asked them, why isn't it colored on both sides? And I looked at them like this. So, but no one asked, why do you do that? Why don't you just look at it and tell us a price? So, based on that, what would be your assumption? What does the customer do with the paper snowflakes?
Hangs them on the ceiling.
They hang them on the ceiling in front of a window. So when the light comes in, it gets reflected. That's why we also like colors. And then you have different colors in your room. And maybe you don't like that warm colors. You like a bit colder colors. And it's important to have colors on both sides because it can turn, right? So once you know who the customer is and what the customer does or what kind of need the customer has, then you can do what? Then you can innovate, right? So once teams really ask who the customer is and what their customers do, they start with, okay, so we need to put a hole in here so we can put a string through it and then we can put it on a ceiling, right? If you do that, you get extra money. But if you don't know what the customer does, I've had teams who come and put like stickies here so you can stick it onto a wall. I'm like, okay, that's not what the customer does with this, right? So if you don't know what the needs and desires of the customer are, you cannot innovate. Or you're just like innovating in lots of different directions and hoping that one of the noodles that you're throwing at the wall just sticks. But that's a lot of hope, right? So we really need to ask the simple questions, right? And this is certainly, I think, something that you could have done better. So the customer, families, and put snowflakes or hang snowflakes on ceiling, right? And then we have all those attributes that you mentioned, bigger snowflakes, colorful snowflakes, sophisticated ones, and so on and so forth. All right, moving on from the customer, what did you do well in your groups? What are you proud of? There are certain things because you created always better snowflakes. Remember what your snowflakes looked like in the first iteration compared to the last iteration, right? So you changed, you improved, but how? Why? Prototyping, exactly. So prototyping is a good thing to do. What else? What else did you do? So you discussed within your groups, right? So there was not one single person telling everyone else how to work, but you really co-created, right? Co-creation. So identified roles based on strength, I assume, right? Yeah. What else? What else did you do well? Yeah, that's part of the co-creation, the communication, absolutely. And maybe it's not obvious to you, but you incorporated the feedback that I gave you, right? So since we worked in iteration and that was given, there was nothing that you decided to do, but you really used those iterations to gather feedback and based on that feedback, improve your product, right? What else did you do in terms of improving the product? It goes a bit like prototyping. I would add experimenting. You were courageous to do experiments. You didn't stick to a model that made €4 and said, okay, let's mass produce this. You started thinking about adding more value, adding colors, using tape to create bigger snowflakes. All of those things were experiments or prototypes which ultimately resulted in better snowflakes. If you take a look now at your sheets, at your tracking sheets, and the average revenue you made per snowflakes in every iteration, how did that change? Can one of the teams read it out loud? Oh, you haven't done the calculation yet? Okay. We'll go iteration by iteration because that's where we see the improvement. From 1 to 7? Yeah, that's very normal. So usually you start out with creating €1 snowflakes, right? Every snowflakes you create, I pay €1. And then you start experimentation. And you end up with snowflakes that give you like 14, 15, 10, 7 euros per snowflake. So what is that? What have we done? You remember Pete talking about output versus outcome? What have we increased? Outcome, right? Output would be if we only increase the number of snowflakes. And my assumption is, and you can prove me wrong, that that number more or less stayed stable, right? Maybe it went up from 1 or 2 to 3 or 4. But the revenue you made per snowflake maybe went up in this group from 1 to 7, 1 to 5, right? So you focused on outcome. Innovation resulted in much better outcome, which is the money that we make. In real life, it's not always that simple. Very few teams really know if we change something, how much more outcome are we getting? So they stick to simpler metrics of measuring, which is output. But just because it's complicated, it shouldn't keep us from really measuring the outcome. So as product people, focusing on outcome is the most important thing that we do. And we can only focus on outcome if we know who the customer is and what the customers want. Most likely you wouldn't find anybody buying shampoo for 30 euros a bottle, right? So you tend to find that sweet spot, right? It's the same with the devices that we use, cell phones, right? Smartphones. They emerge from a co-creation, from a very creative process of prototypes, and then you mass produce a single type of device and then sell it. So mass production is not a bad thing, but we need to get there first. And this is the creation part where we are in, the exploration part. All right. So to wrap this up quickly, I'm sure we talked about things that you could have done better. One being asking who the customer is and what they want. And using Agile frameworks, for example, Scrum and the practices in there, help us do that. A very simple way where we constantly get reminded about these questions is using user stories as a template for requirements. Because every time we create a user story, we ask, for whom are we building this? What are we building and why? What is the underlying need or desire that we're approaching this, right? Another thing you could have done better is take more time for reflection. Not only reflection on what we build, but also on how we build it. I don't know if you remember at one point during the exercise, I said, hey, take a minute or two and think about how you can improve building the snowflakes. You guys barely listened and just continued working. And that's very normal, right? So that's why we need a certain type of role in Scrum, being the Scrum Master, who says, now we're going to stop and we're going to focus on process improvement as a whole team, right? And the third thing, and we see that in a lot of other exercises as well, is how much cross-team collaboration happened? None. Why? You assumed you were competitors, right? And that's very normal behavior too. And we don't see that only in this exercise, we see that within organizations. We see that within organizations that are working on the same product, right? Having a team is really great. You identify yourself with a team, and this feeling of competitiveness helps your team to improve. At the same time, we are not sports teams competing with each other. Ultimately, we have one shared goal. So it's very important that we have experience sharing across the teams. Right? There are many other things that we can discuss based on this exercise. I would leave it with these three. Focus on the customer, continuously improve, and continuously improve also by sharing knowledge across the teams. Any questions?
Maybe
yes, please.
I had this exercise several times regarding the teams not being one team but being competitors and not knowing that and just assuming. To me, I mean, is this something which would happen in the real world? I mean, you would instantly know if you are building, if you're one company or if you're several companies. So I fully agree that we can work on this and see how people behave. But in real world, would they not know that they are competitors or that they are not competitors?
Yeah.
So, for example, I said, "Oh, I'm spying at the competitors just now." So I looked at them, but I wasn't sure if I'm allowed to because I thought we were competitors. So in the real world, I would say, "Well, I'm part of one company. I'm not a competitor."
Yeah. That's correct. But what still happens is that people tend to not take the time, right? Tend to not take the time and go and ask, and more importantly, not take the time or feel obliged to actually respond to the question that someone from another team is asking because it's not my team, right? So it's very important to continuously make sure, hey, we're all working towards one goal and making this a habit of sharing knowledge between the teams. I hope you enjoyed the exercise. I hope you learned something from it. And I hope you also enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Welcome.